Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Voices That Heal podcast. I am your girl, Jamie. I am very excited to be with you tonight. I am a stage 4 lung cancer patient. I was diagnosed December of 2018. I have been hosting this podcast now for a month or two just to give lung cancer patients and the community and those around us an opportunity to have more in-depth conversations about topics that are important to us. And as you guys know, we are in the month of November, which is Lung Cancer Awareness Month, but it's also Caregivers Awareness Month and Smoking Cessation Month. So all month long, I have been hosting podcasts all around those topics, just kind of bringing awareness and trying to start conversations and discussions around these various topics so that people can have the information and resources that they need. So tonight's conversation is going to be a great one. I saved the best for last. We're going to be talking to the caregivers and the support organizations that help them do what they do. So for patients like myself and others, the caregivers are the unsung heroes in our journey, the people that are there day in and day out, tirelessly taking care of not only us, but themselves, and doing the things that we sometimes forget to do. So I am really, really excited to be joined by all three of these beautiful women. So I'm going to bring them all on stage and allow them to introduce themselves one by one. So the first up on my screen is Michelle Bolden. So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself and your organization.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me, Jamie. I'm excited to be here. Happy National Family Caregivers Month to all our caregivers who are absolutely amazing. And my name is Michelle Bolden. I'm the CEO and founder of Call for Caring, Inc. And our organization helps support family caregivers through resources, education, training classes. And so we're just a matter of support to empower you through education primarily. And so we do that through our expos in Atlanta and Chicago. We have a couple of podcasts as well that we do. We offer family caregiver classes, not only to adults, but now we're venturing into young caregivers, middle high schoolers as well, who need that special attention also. And so I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Definitely. And I'm excited to have you. We're going to dive all into what Call for Caring does. I had the opportunity to work with you a little bit at the African American Lung Cancer Patient and Caregiver Summit this year. And I'm super excited to just dive in a little bit more and give that organization a spotlight. So below us is Venitra White-Dean, who is the Executive Director of the Frankie May Foundation. So Venitra, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Jamie. And it's nice to be here with the other fabulous ladies on here. I am Venitra White-Dean, the founder and executive director for the Frankie May Foundation. I was my mother's primary caregiver. She was living with Alzheimer's, and she passed away in September of 2020. And so I started the Frankie May Foundation, number one, to honor her memory, and number two, to help family caregivers navigate through the day-to-day life of caregiving. Michelle, listening to you and what your organization does, we are like spirit animals. So our organization does pretty much the same thing. We provide resources, we provide respite care. We also partner with other agencies in Charlotte, North Carolina, to provide free grocery delivery services, to provide mental health therapy services. And we have a caregiver store where the caregivers can come and shop for free for items such as Depends, bed pads, body wash, medical supplies, things that, insurance may or may not cover. And so we just try to be that wraparound support service for family caregivers.
I love that. We're going to dive all into that as well, because there's some amazing resources that you're providing to the community. And last but certainly not least is somebody that I've gotten quite fond of and close to in the last couple of months, Miss Venitra Carpenter. Jennifer, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell your story and your sister's story, if you don't mind.
So let me start by saying thank you so much for allowing me to be on this panel. Caregivers Month, lung cancer advocacy, smoking cessation, it's an amazing time, and I'm just so happy to be here. I'm happy to see familiar faces like Michelle. Good to see you as well, and to meet you, Venitra. Jamie, you're just amazing. I just want to give my testimony to you. You are an amazing individual, and it's wonderful to see you. So my name is Jennifer Carpenter, and I was the primary caregiver for my sister, Debora Carpenter. Debora was a lung cancer fighter for about 4 years. And Debora's lung cancer journey, if I could touch on that just briefly, Deborah was a former smoker. She smoked Newports for about 30 years. She quit, but about 6 years later, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was found at a very late stage, and she had to have about half of her right lung removed as a result of that. Following surgery, she had chemotherapy, and when you go to that next CT scan where everything's supposed to be great or at least stable for her, it showed that the cancer had metastasized to her good lung. So it was devastating news, but she was being treated at an academic medical center, and they sent her tumor off for biomarker testing and found that she had a mutation called KRAS G12C. So we were fortunate enough where this center where she was being treated, it was actually starting to enroll patients for a clinical trial for KRAS G12C. She met the screening criteria, she enrolled, and we bore witness to the miracle of medicine. She went from someone who was on oxygen to no longer needing oxygen at all. She was walking about a mile every day and a half. She got her life back. And once that happened, she became a fierce lung cancer advocate. She shared her experience. She gave her testimony to anyone who could benefit from it, anyone who wanted to listen, anyone who wanted to talk about cancer. She wanted to inspire hope. She wanted people to know that they needed to talk with their doctors, get a second opinion, find someone who would get you that biomarker testing. And she just wanted people to know from her experience how they could have maybe a better outcome than what she did. So for the time that she was doing well, she, as I said, she was this fierce advocate. She brought me along on that. But unfortunately, cancer found at a late stage finds a way, unfortunately. So in spite of all the treatments that she had, she still had to experience immunotherapy, which did not do well for her. She also had radiation, but cancer progressed. So after about 4 years, her journey came to an end, which was December of just last year. And since then, so my role was her primary caregiver. I've taken this year to heal and to restore and to grieve. It's been a process. Let me tell you, this is my first Thanksgiving without my sister. My sister was my older sister. So this is definitely uncharted waters, but I'm just so glad to be here. We come from really a family of women who have battled lung cancer. My mom had this disease as well. She was not a smoker. We found out, my sister and I found out in early 2023, our grandmother also died from lung cancer. She was not a smoker. So we know anyone with lungs can get lung cancer. It's not just about smoking. And so I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad to speak from this caregiver perspective, but I'm also looking forward to the future of how we respond to a cancer diagnosis and how we learn to beat lung cancer.
Absolutely. And so, audience, I know you can already tell just based on the testimonies that these three women have given that this is about to be an amazing conversation. But I want to also make sure that I mention that you can engage with us. So you don't have to just watch. If you'd like to drop a question, leave a comment, show some love and support in the chat, please feel free. We are streaming live on Facebook right now under the Heal Collaborative page. We're also streaming live on the Heal Collaborative YouTube. So if you leave a comment on any of those platforms, I'll see it and try to work it into the conversation for us. So that being said, let's jump in. I mean, I have so many things. I'm over here taking notes. So if you guys see me looking down, it's because I'm over here scribbling all over this piece of paper. But I definitely want to jump into a few things that you guys have mentioned already. First of all, Jennifer, like I never got to meet your sister, and I do regret that because I feel like her and I would have definitely gotten along. Like, it sounds to me like she's the type of person that I am, you know, and when you said she got her life back after biomarker testing, I can 100% relate to that because that's how I felt. You know, that was something that turned this entire diagnosis from like, what am I doing and what's going to happen to me to I'm actually doing okay. You know, and so I 100% can relate to that getting your life back feeling when being on a targeted therapy like that. But one of the other things you mentioned just now that I really honed in on, and, you know, of course I have to jump in because it's got our name in it, but what does healing look like for you? You know, like now that this page has turned, unfortunately, and you're in this process, what is healing for you at this moment?
I'll start with bereavement counseling. So I am my sister's final days. She was in hospice care, and I'm grateful for that because as a result, hospice has provided for 1 year. They're providing monthly counseling for me, and so it's 1 hour that I get with a professional, and that has been huge for me to help process my own feelings, my own kind of what do you do when you're a caregiver? You're in this nonstop, always on the go mode. And so when that journey is over, what do you do? What do you do with all that energy after you rest? First thing I did was shut down everything for probably about a month.
Yes, I was going to say.
And slept. I mean, I slept for days. I slept till my back started hurting. But I needed to get up. And that's where I'm so grateful. My husband and friends were like, you've got to get up. You've got to get going. You've got to get out of that house. I just needed to take that break for myself. But having a beautiful support system of friends that I didn't even know I still had. Friends reached out to me from college that met Debora and said, hey, let's go to dinner. You want to go for a walk? Let's get out and walk when it was still warm enough to get outside and go for a walk.
Yeah.
So having that support system of my friends, my family has been there too. Like I said, my husband, my in-laws, my brother, people have been cousins, people have been there for me, but it's really been my friends, my girlfriends have really been just a great support, getting me out of the house. Let's go to dinner. Let's go meet up for drinks. Let's go to a movie. Let's just go do something to take my mind off of things. I've also am so fortunate. I've got a friend who just said, all you have to do is send me a text. Not good. That's all I have to do. And she knows, send me some encouraging words, give me some space, but to be there for me.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate all of these friends like trying to be there for me in so many different ways. And it's helped. In addition to, as I said, that bereavement counseling, where there's some things that you have to process that are really between you and that person that you lost. And from that perspective, having someone who's a professional talk to me, give me some perspective that I didn't see myself, helping me to give compassion for myself. It's been essential. And so I'm so lucky that I still have that. I think I only have a few more months of counseling, but between that and my friends, it's been huge.
Absolutely. And maybe one of these wonderful ladies will be able to assist you with continuing counseling if necessary, once that window is up. But I definitely love that. And I think in terms of healing, like, I don't think people put enough emphasis on that part of the process, like once you're not a care. And I mean, I'm speaking totally from face value because I haven't necessarily had to go through this, but I know me as a person, I feel like, you go through something like that and then you have this loss and like, your first instinct is to just jump back into something else. You don't give yourself that time to rebound and to, really just relax and recoup and rest, like you said. And so I love that you took that time for yourself and that you're still actively taking that time to, process and revitalize yourself. I think that's amazing.
Jamie, may I hop in right quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jennifer, totally understanding where you're coming from. Just as you aren't prepared to be a caregiver, you aren't prepared for life after caregiving. Nobody told me what to expect and what not to expect. When my mother was gone, I was lost. I had spent so many years being her caregiver that's what I was so used to doing. I was on autopilot being her caregiver. And so when she was gone, I was trying to figure out, what do I do with myself? So Jennifer, I totally understand, the resting, and just giving yourself the opportunity and giving yourself permission to feel what you feel is so important, and not feel like you still have to be superwoman at all times. Just allow yourself that break and allow yourself to feel whatever emotion it is that you feel. I mean, that good ugly cry will do you some good sometimes, and sometimes you just need to put your big girl panties on and go out and face the day. So I totally understand exactly what you're going through.
And I do just want to add that, you know, it's great that a hospice organization gives you a year, but there's no time limit on grieving, right?
Mhm.
Everyone is completely different. And so while they give you that benefit for a year, there may be time where you may need to continue that indefinitely. It just depends on what your grieving process is. Sometimes we do better after a while. Sometimes we come back and we need it again. And I had the honor of knowing Debora and actually having a conversation with Jennifer and Debora on one of our podcasts. It was amazing. It was amazing to see the sisterly love that was between the two, right? Mm-hmm. The roles that were clearly played and identified as caregiver and care recipient, and how you all worked together in order to make Debora's journey much better. She was a true advocate of research, which I so admired, right? And I remember one thing she said, that research gave me hope. Mm. I just needed that, right? All I needed was hope, and research gave her that. So that was amazing to just be a part of that part of your journey. But the grieving, again, I think counseling is amazing. Some people feel like they don't need that, but I think that's a wonderful thing to do through hospice or any other service. Mm-hmm. And just even talking about hospice. In our community, often hospice is a red flag or a negative. Yes. But mm-hmm. hospice can be a wonderful, dignified, respectable way of progressing, right? And mm-hmm. so when you receive it in an early part of your journey, that allows for your family to begin the grieving process, mm-hmm. to begin to love on one another, to say their goodbyes, to celebrate that life, right? Mm-hmm. In that hospice journey. And then the other thing I just want to say, the role of the caregiver when you grieve, you've lost that role as a caregiver, but it's kind of like you lost your responsibilities. You've done this every day, day in and day out, and it stops just like that. Now what do I do, right?
Yeah.
You know, everything is a reminder of, it's 9 o'clock. I should be giving meds right now, right? Mm-hmm. Everything is a reminder of that entire journey. So it does take time to go through that. But I'm excited to be on with all of you all. You all are amazing. And so just wanted to add that piece about grieving. We have to respect that and give it the time that we need.
Yes,
absolutely.
100%. So I want to jump into the organizations that you, Michelle, and Venitra have, and just some of the different things that, like, you know, Jennifer's talking about the resources that she's got for her process. What are some of the things that you guys offer to caregivers that you can dive into a little bit more? So we'll start with Venitra, because you talking about your store, and I want to talk all about that store. I think that's an amazing thing that you're offering, and see if they have it in several different states. I know you're in North Carolina, but I know there's folks listening around the country that are probably like, can we get in on that somehow?
Yeah. So when we started in January of 2022. And to be perfectly honest, I had no clue what the nonprofit was going to be. My background is in accounting. So starting a nonprofit was just totally not in my cards, but we started in January of 2022, and my idea was we were just going to do maybe quarterly support groups. Well, when we had our first meeting, the caregivers said, no, we want to do something every month. So here I am scrambling around trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do every month with these caregivers? And so we started with our monthly meetups, and we do the last Saturday of every month, and we have someone to come in and talk about resources that are available for the family caregivers. I know when my mom was first diagnosed in 2012, I had never heard of an adult daycare. I had no reason to know what an adult daycare was, but my mom was we started taking her to an adult daycare. And so we just provide resources, you know, let caregivers know about adult daycare. Let them know if the county will pay for adult daycare. There are other agencies in North Carolina and in Mecklenburg County that provide cash grants for caregivers to use however they see fit. We have some caregivers that have used funding to pay for adult daycare or to pay for a home care agency to come to their home to make renovations to their home to make it safer or easily accessible. And at the caregiver meetup, we actually pay for home health to go to the house to sit with the loved one so that the caregiver can come to the monthly meetup. So they don't have to worry about paying someone. They don't have to worry about finding someone. We take care of all that leg work for them. And during the monthly meetup, the caregiver store is a huge hit. It's like grocery shopping at the caregiver store. So, we have Depends, we bed pads, we have gloves, we have cleaning supplies, things that will make day-to-day life for the family caregivers easier. We can't make it easy, but we can make it easier for them to navigate through day-to-day life. And if it's something that they need and we don't have it at the store, we will either reach out to our network, or I'll just get on Amazon and order it. Last week, we have one of our caregivers is caring for his wife with breast cancer, and she's in a wheelchair now, and he needed a ramp in the front of the house. So we ordered a ramp from Amazon, had it delivered to the house so he could get his wife in and out of the house. So things like that. We partnered with another agency for the free mental health therapy piece. We partner with an agency for free home delivery. We partner with other agencies. We have a mobile food pantry that comes, and once a month, the caregivers can come and get free groceries. So it's just anything that the caregivers need. We survey them every month to say, hey, what is it you need? And we just add services based on whatever the caregiver needs. I've been there, I've done that, so I know. So I just want to make sure our caregivers know that, hey, we see you, we hear you, we're here for you. So that's what we do. I just call it a support group on steroids.
I love that. And I can relate. I'm sitting here listening to you speak, and I'm like, I probably should have had my mother on this conversation, because my grandmother actually had Alzheimer's, and my mother was the caregiver for her and my grandfather, actually. So right in my back pocket as a caregiver, and I didn't even put them on the show. She'll yell at me later, but that's fine. So Michelle, go ahead and let's talk about Call for Caring and the same kind of resources that you offer to caregivers.
Yeah, and I would agree. We are kind of a sister and soul here with some of the service that we offer in Atlanta, and as well as now we're beginning in Chicago. But so my journey kind of started with Call for Caring as a nonprofit when I actually own a personal companion care agency in which we were providing those services as a paid provider. And so we would get the same calls from caregivers, not knowing where to go, didn't have the money to pay for caregiving. Often they fell into that gap of, I don't qualify for Medicaid, but I don't make enough money in order to pay for these services out of pocket, right? So we started keeping this resource book next to the phone and just answering the same questions. So we thought there's got to be a better way to do this. So we created the Atlanta Family Caregiver Expo. First one happened in 2017. And so we brought together home healthcare companies, hospice companies, durable medical equipment, transport companies, the Area Agency on Aging, elderly law attorneys, all those components of caregiving that are really important. About 35 vendors brought them together to have them to be a resource for caregivers who came in. Wow. And then also we added some presentations. So we would do about legal matters for caregivers, how to talk to your primary care physician and advocate for your loved ones. Our services are not only just for lung cancer patients, but all caregivers. So regardless of the diagnosis, we service all caregivers. And then we added the virtual dementia tour. And so for those who are experiencing, those who have loved ones with dementia, there is a virtual dementia tour that we utilize that allows for you to see, feel, and touch as though you have dementia. So it's a great empathy exercise to understand what that loved one is going through every day. They ask for you to do something in about 5 minutes, and it's a huge challenge. So you can imagine what that person is going through 24/7, right? And so we began the expo, and then it expanded to our podcast. And so now we have 2 podcasts, about 20 so episodes or so on varying topics. Caregivers, we also have experts on, attorneys. employee human resources. There are benefits that we can use as family caregivers that will allow for us to take advantage of caring for our loved ones, right? FMLA, intermittent FMLA, that sometimes we don't talk about. So those are resources that we try to connect family caregivers with as well. And then we started our family caregiver classes. And so these are classes that we're offering through municipalities now. And so we began with the city of Sandy Springs here in Georgia. So we did a 7-series class for family caregivers. Each class is a different topic about caregiving. Legal matters, a CPR class, AARP comes and provides resources, 7 classes on different topics, and we work with them one-on-one. And we like to have it in person because we want caregivers to get away from that isolation, right? We want them to come into a space, commune with other caregivers. And as also, Venitra, as you mentioned, we pay for respite care. When they're at our expo, we have a respite care space where their loved ones are fed and have music, live music that's there as well, right? And so we provide respite because we know that's one of the number one reasons why caregivers can't leave. I don't have anyone to watch my loved one, right? I can't leave. So let's take care of that piece so we can allow for you to come and get a break for yourself, get resources, but also just commune with other people. Then we started our caregiver day out, in which we hang out with a caregiver. We did a paint and sip. We're looking to start Top Golf next year, just for them to come and hang out. And so what we want to do is, again, to partner with communities in which adult daycares or home care providers, in which they will cover the cost or minimum cost that we cover for respite care as well. Again, taking the challenge of not being able to have that support. One of the other things we do is we provide respite care scholarships. So we just had our Breakfast of Champions last week, in which we honored 4 families with scholarships. So we give them dollars to pay for respite care. So they pick a provider, whether it's adult daycare or an in-home care provider, and we cover that service, and we pay them directly because we only want them to use it for respite. We do not want them to go pay bills, etc. We want you to get the break that you deserve, because it's important that you take care of yourself in order to care for others, right? And so that's another program that we have as well, as the respite scholarship. So again, we're just a connection for the families based upon their individual needs. Every family is different. And so we have those conversations. We do some care coaching where we talk with them one-on-one, and we give them resources that are specific for them, right?
So
Michelle, do you know Nathaniel Brown?
Yes. Yes, for the dementia.
He did a documentary.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I thought so.
Yes, in Chicago. We did that in Chicago.
Okay. Yeah, it's all coming together now.
All coming together. Okay.
All coming together now.
It's a small world out here in this caregiving space.
Right.
And I just want to say, you two, Michelle, Venitra, to turn your pain, to turn your experience into something that can help others. You both were already caregivers. That's a selfless act. To continue that and provide resources for others is just a continuation of such a selfless act. You two are beautiful people for doing what you're doing. I applaud you both.
Thank you.
This is part of my therapy. I tell the caregivers, I get just as much out of being around them and meeting their loved ones and just spending time with them. It's part of my grieving process.
Wow. And I learn from them as much as they learn from us, because I'm still a caregiver. I help care for my dad as well. I'm one of 3. My sisters care for him, and I travel back and forth to care for my dad. So I learn from them just as much as well. So it's a great reciprocal relationship here as well with all the caregivers. But thank you.
Absolutely. And I know that was a lot of resources, guys, that you guys put out there and you gave to the audience. So I'll make sure that at the end of the show, we get links to you guys' organizations. I'll give you the opportunity to shout out their websites and social media handles, so that if people want to connect with you and actually take advantage of these resources you're offering, they have that opportunity. So guys, don't feel like you have to write this down. I will get the information to you. But yeah, you guys are really providing amazing things. And I honestly think back to how much I know my mother struggled with taking care of my grandmother and my grandfather, and really just wish that I had the wherewithal at the time to connect her to these kind of resources, because I think it probably would have been helpful. I don't know that she ever had a day off from taking care of either of them, to be honest, So it's hindsight is 2020, So now that we know, it's like each one teach one, and we'll share it with somebody going forward for sure.
Yeah. And, Jamie, I do want to mention just briefly, I mentioned a little bit about the young caregivers, but, we all have like about 5.6 million young people under the age of 18 who is caring for someone. And so when you think about single family households, someone gets a diagnosis of lung cancer or breast cancer, and they have a 13, 14, 10-year-old, who is their caregiver, that child, right? And so we really want to bring light to that. And our organization is planning to do some education in middle school and high schools, a 5-series class versus just a 7 in high school. So we're planning to start that early next year, and I'm really excited about that. But when I mentioned that, people are like, oh, that's right. And because I was a young caregiver, not realizing I was a young caregiver as early as 13 years old, helping with my mom who had breast cancer. And so we want to bring light to that. And I'm excited that we're providing these resources. They're very young minds, and what they see as normal is really not normal. And so we want to let them know this is only a small part of your journey of life. And as you progress and get older, there's still opportunities for careers and advancements, et cetera. And so I do want to mention that. And for these lung cancer patients who have young children, let them know, share that information with them, let them verbalize what's going on. They are an important part of your journey as well.
Absolutely. And Michelle, it's a really, really good point and a good transition into my next question for all three of you. And I'm hoping that maybe Jennifer, you can jump in and talk a little bit about what you had to do for your sister, but what are some of the do's and don'ts in this process? There's paperwork that's going to be necessary. A lot of the stuff you can't do for your loved one if you're not proxy or you're not, all those kinds of things. So can you guys talk through maybe some of the paperwork that we should have on hand for caregivers, like any kind of documentation that, like what would be in that caregiver Bible, if you will, that each caregiver should have? And Jennifer, maybe you can talk about some of the things that you had or wish you had to make your job a little bit easier.
Well, I'll start with FMLA and specifically intermittent FMLA. So when with Debora's lung cancer journey, the journey had these highs and lows. So there were times when I said she got her life back. She's driving again. She's living on her own. She's independent. She truly had every aspect of her life back. And so my role as caregiver was just being a sounding board, just being a sister, really just being there for her. But as things progressed, and there were times when, there was one time when she went into the hospital, and a week later when she was discharged, she couldn't walk. She had OT appointments, PT appointments, a neurologist, like it suddenly exploded. And here I am trying to care for my sister, move her into my house, get her to these appointments while I'm working. And I was struggling terribly. I thought I was going to have to change jobs. I couldn't afford to leave my job, but I was like, I need part-time work or something. And I'm grateful that when I spoke with HR, they said, oh, we need for you to go out on FMLA and you can use this for your sister. That's what we thought, except you can't. So FMLA, and Michelle, please correct me here if I'm wrong. So FMLA, you can take for your parents.
Right.
For your children.
Right. And it's defining. So some organizations are kind of leaning that a little bit, what you can do for FMLA, but generally it is your parents and your immediate family and not necessarily a sibling. But that's an opportunity as an action item for us to take action or to expand that FMLA. But yeah, it's based upon the organization, but that is the primary.
Michelle, that's something maybe you and I could talk about in 2025, because having gone through that experience, it was very difficult because ultimately, when they said, I can't take this for my sister, what they ended up saying, this Black woman that worked in HR, and I think that was special that she could see I was struggling. And she said, Jennifer, we've got to figure this out before you can't focus. You're sitting in front of your screen, not getting things done. You're not productive. And I was like, I'm already there. And she said, oh, well, you can take FMLA for you. I had no idea, for exhaustion, my own exhaustion. Meaning when you are giving medications around the clock, 3 a.m., 5 a.m., there's just no time to really rest and sleep, process all that, and be fresh for work. So intermittent FMLA is what I ended up taking for about 6 months. And what that meant was my 8 hours a day job was more of a like 2 hours a day job for about 6 months, and that was everything for me. It gave me time to not have to worry about keeping my money, keeping my job, keeping that going, while I could give all of my time and energy to Deborah's care. So that was essential. So I would start with FMLA and exploring that, at least finding out, as Michelle said, it varies from one organization to the next, but at least find out what support systems there are to let you just step away from work if you need that, so you're not pulling yourself into more directions than you're already doing, juggling care for someone else.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And even with intermittent, you took, maybe 6 hours, but you could take it, one day a week, 2 or 3 days out of a month, just based upon what your needs are with intermittent FMLA. And so people don't realize they have that option to do that as well. So, and Jamie, I'll just say, when you talk about the Bible for the family caregiver, those things that are really important early in this journey, even for yourself right now, are the power of attorney, health and financial power of attorneys, the advance directives, knowing what your loved one wants gives you peace of mind as the disease progresses. Also cuts down on some of the bickering among family members, right? Because no one is guessing what that person wants. They know that in writing, this is how they want to progress, right? And so having advanced directives, power of attorneys, health and financial is just really key to make your journey much easier, as well for your loved one. But also just think about yourself and the next generation who you're passing this down to, that you have those things in place for your family as well.
Yeah. And speaking about advanced directives, we actually had Atrium Health to come in last month, and our caregivers were able to do advanced directives on the spot, and we got those notarized and witnessed. And I did it myself. I didn't have one, so I did that myself. And just things like that the caregivers may or may not have. We just want to make sure that they're equipped with things like that. So we're very adamant about making sure they have what they need. And another thing I want to bring up is long-term care insurance. Mm-hmm. We were able to keep my mother home the last 7 months of her life. Of course, hospice stepped in as well. But we didn't have to have that financial strain because my mother had long-term care insurance, and we could pay someone to come to the home, and we didn't have to worry about that. So I am a strong proponent of long-term care insurance. My husband and I got policies when we were taking care of my mother because I saw the need was there and how much it helped us not to have to stress financially about that.
That's right. And, even some of the resources, say, you don't have the option for long-term care, there are some insurance plans as well that offer the benefit for you to be able to, look at using life insurance while you're alive, and some cash benefits in there as well. I encourage people to look at that. And also, there could be Medicaid programs in your county that have waiver programs, right, that cover care if you qualify for waivers. And so waiver means that it's not the standard Medicaid requirements, but they waive them a little bit in order for maybe a larger span of people to fit that qualification. So because you make this income doesn't mean that you can say no. Doesn't hurt to ask. And so you certainly can go to your area agency on aging. Generally, they have, like in Georgia, we have the Power Line. And so you reach out to that agency and you identify, do I qualify? And also those agencies also have benefits for things that may not be income based. They could be county resources where they have grants and dollars available that they may pay for 2 or 3 hours a day. Something helps. Just getting a few hours away or a few hours of extra sleep is important. So even that start is beneficial. But I always recommend the area agency just to start when you don't know where to go and what to do, what's available. Start there and you'll be surprised at what information they can give you for your specific state.
Yes.
We got one question in the chat here, ladies, that I'm going to put out. I think I already know the answer, and I think you guys do too. But Faith checks in and says, does FMLA pay your full pay while you're out?
It did for me. I'll say it sounds like it's organizational based. It did for me. That was the lifesaver. I didn't have to worry about what was happening with work. Am I sharp? If my mind is focused on 3 p.m. appointment, 3 p.m. medications, what do we have to do? Is there food? Is that, all these things that you're navigating. I did not have to worry about my job, and it paid my salary in full every month. And I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. And again, I think that's based upon how long you've been at an organization, the organization itself. Is it a small business, a large business, a small entrepreneurship? So I think that's going to vary, but that's wonderful that you're able to do that. But the major thing that it does is really to protect your job for that time period, right? It protects your job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the other question I want to ask, and we can kind of transition a little bit into this for you, Michelle, you talked about the young caregivers. The question in the chat was, is there a specific age range or age limit on who can be a caregiver? So I'm not sure if that's it's not necessarily something you can put an age limit on in regular life, but in terms of call for caring and what you're offering for the young caregivers, is there maybe a limit on that age?
Yeah, so right now we're getting ready to start a high school program, so it would be 14. But next year we also will begin middle school. So we're looking at 12-year-old, in some case 11. But yeah, so for us it would be middle to high school age is what we're looking at. But there is an American Association of Youth Caregivers that focuses just on young caregivers. And so if you have a young person in your home, they have multiple resources, online activities that they can do for just young caregivers. So I encourage you to check into that as well.
Right. And so this is something that I think Jennifer and I can kind of maybe talk about for a second here. So, as a lung cancer patient myself, there's a lot of times where people are like, what are the caregivers doing for you? And if you're in my position, you're in my shoes, sometimes you're like, I don't know, I'm kind of doing all these things on my own, like I'm taking my own medication, I'm making my own appointments, I'm doing my own thing. But I wanted to kind of share some unspoken ways that you can caregive from a patient's perspective to the audience that's listening, because I think a lot of times people want to help and they want to jump in and they want to do things. But when you have an independent person or you have somebody who is kind of doing their own thing, they're not going to tell you what they need. They're not going to say, hey, can you go do this? Or can you help me do that? You have to kind of understand the person that you're dealing with and know the things that they need. So if you're at their house and you see like maybe they need laundry done, or you're at their house and they're maybe short on groceries, like Instacart them some milk, Instacart them some eggs, maybe for a Christmas present, give them a week of, housekeeping or something like that. Just those kinds of things are the ways that friends and family and other folks that are interested in helping out a patient can help without having to necessarily ask. And like patients like myself, we're not going to tell you. So it's like, you got to play detective a little bit and kind of figure out, what would be helpful for that person. And so it comes down to who it is. But I think for me personally, that would be the kinds of things that I would appreciate and that I would love for folks to do if necessary, or if they're looking to get involved. But Jennifer, I wanted to kind of see what your opinions and your thoughts were on that too.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. My sister, didn't get to meet her. She was incredibly independent and needed that. I think for her own peace of mind and her own healing through lung cancer, she needed to know that she could do the things that she wanted to do.
Yeah.
But there were some things that we had to kind of say, okay, wait a minute, let's take a step back. So things that I would, I can tell you one of the first things that we did was, Debora, you can no longer cut your grass. We're going to get the guy up to cut your grass. She loved, that was a piece, it was peaceful for her. So, yeah. But no, Debora, we're going to have someone come in and they're going to cut your grass for you. She would always hop in her vehicle and go wherever she needed to. So I would always, let me gas this up for you. Wherever we're going, I'm going to hop it because I just didn't want her like breathing in those gas fumes, having to stand there. So let me fill the tank up for you. Friends that wanted to help, they would say like, what kind of food does she like? And if you asked her, she would say, oh, I don't need anything. I'm good. I'll make my own. No.
Yeah.
So we just started having, just bring her food, bring her food. And so certain neighbors, certain family members on a certain day, I would say, just bring her food. If she doesn't want it, okay, fine. She always ate it. That night, but just little things like just going ahead and being a support and just helping any way you can. And then little things like, Debora, I know a lot of people have either children, pets. Debora had cats, right? Can someone just help feed those cats?
Yeah.
Not necessarily her, not necessarily do something, but like to lighten her load in this really small way. And then what that did was it allowed people to have a conversation. Yeah, you're just trying to help feed the cats, right? But now you're there for like 30 minutes, an hour. You're checking on her without saying, hey, do you need anything? Hey, is it okay if I come by? It's finding ways to just be there for people without having to be deliberate with what you're trying to do. Just show up and be there was essential for Debora. And providing some support and try to kind of lighten her load. Also things like she was a big sports fan. So a friend would say, hey, do you want to watch this football game together? Sure. Again, it was a way for them to check on her.
Yeah.
She didn't always know that. But so I would say things like that, and ways that you can find to spend time with people without being that really obvious, hey, how are you doing today? How are you doing? How are you doing? What do you need? You need things like that.
Unspoken caregiving is what I call it.
And one thing that I would just say is just being present during doctor's appointments, especially sometimes major doctor's appointments, because hearing things can be overwhelming. And so you may miss some important things, but having that second set of ears is like so important to be able to say, I thought I heard this, right? Yeah. Or help me to research this, because, when you get news sometimes and it's not what you want, you kind of tune out and you focus on what was said that was probably negative, right? And so having that second set of ears, I think, is important. Even they're independent as they can be, but just having that support, I think is just great as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Venitra, do you have anything to add for that as well?
And, you're talking about going to doctor's appointments. We also had Atrium Health to come in and do like a My Chart seminar to show how to get on My Chart and being a proxy on someone's My Chart. So you can go in on their My Chart and see the doctor's notes and see the summary of the doctor visit. So I think that's a good thing to do as well. Just be a proxy on their account.
Yep, absolutely. And that is both of what you just said is amazing for me. Like the being there at the appointments is a big thing, because I've told my story a lot, and part of my story is like when I hear the diagnosis part, it's like you just have this out of body experience, and they're like, well, what was going through your mind? And I'm like, I have no idea. I wasn't in my mind when I heard that. I just was. I have no idea where I was. So I have no idea what that doctor said to me from this moment to like that moment until I came back into the room and was like, what did you just say to me? And so having somebody else in the room to just listen to the conversation and get some of that information, maybe take notes or give them your questions that you have ahead of time. Like, these are the things that I want to get out of this appointment, or these are the things I want to ask the doctor. Make a note so that when I'm in this space and I'm in this environment and maybe my emotions are high and my attention is not where it needs to be, you make sure you ask these questions so that we don't walk out of here without getting these answers. Even that is critical for lung cancer and any kind of cancer patients. So I definitely appreciate those things. And I just wanted to share that with the audience, because I know that there's a lot of folks that always ask, not just me, but friends of mine, like, how can they help? And we're also dang independent. Nobody wants to tell them what we need. So you just got to kind of be aggressively, secretly helpful at the same time. And I appreciate all of those suggestions. But we're quickly running out of time in the show, and I have two very major questions to ask all three of you. So I want to make sure we get to these two and still leave time for you guys to give your contact information. But what are some ways that you can encourage caregivers to care for themselves too while they're caregiving? I know that we talked a little bit about leaning into resources and finding the respite care so they can go out and do activities, but what are the other ways, or what are some other things that if people are not you know, like say the folks that are not in North Carolina or not in Georgia and they don't have those resources for respite care, what are some other ways that we can have caregivers care for themselves when they have a hard time being able to pull away, you know, when they're the everything for their caregiver, for their person they're caring for?
I would say the first thing is you have to plan it. I mean, just like you plan a doctor's appointment, you plan, you know, when you're going to give them a bath or help with the bath, you have to plan your care, your own self-care. And it doesn't have to, it's great to be a massage or going to get a mani and a pedi, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be simple meditation, playing music, what we call mindfulness, just playing 5 minutes of just mindfulness music, or it could just be music. Deep breathing during that music, not thinking about what's going to happen next or what happened in the past, but literally being in that moment is a form of mindfulness. Journaling is a form of mindfulness. Again, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can do that. Coloring, small puzzles. Those are all types of self-care that we encourage people to do that doesn't cost money. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it's, again, just relieving stress in different ways with short things to do. But I would say plan your self-care. The other piece I would say is have an accountability partner. Have someone who calls and their first question is, how are you doing today, right? Not your loved one, but how are you doing today, right? Did you go and have lunch with somebody and someone, right? Did you do mindfulness today for 5 minutes, right? Did you walk around the house, literally inside the house for 5 or 10 minutes, right? So someone who is your accountability partner, and don't pick the easy people. Pick the people who are going to call you and say, did you really do that? Do I need to come over there? Right? So get those tough accountability partners. But I think that would be a good start.
Yep. And I'll reiterate, you know, it doesn't have to cost a lot, and it doesn't have to take an hour or 2 hours or a week. Just do something for yourself. I know I used to sit out on the porch and people watch, you know, just something simple that really made a difference, because once I came back in the house, I was like, okay, I can do this. So it's just little things that can help give you that boost to keep going.
Jennifer, and how about you? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
No, I was going to say, just a real quick, Venitra just reminded me. And when you do those little things, because we say, I don't have time, I can't leave them alone. Maybe it's something that you both enjoy, eating some ice cream, listening to jazz music, even though they're sitting there, right? That still gives you a breather as well. So even if it's simple things that you have to do with the other person, if it still brings you joy, that's what's important.
That's exactly what I was going to touch on, Michelle, that if there's something that you can do with your loved one that allows both of you to rest, do that. So yeah, popping in a movie, let's watch a Netflix series, you know, something where we can both put our feet up. We're there together. You can talk about it and engage, right? I would strongly recommend that. Find a way to rest when your person is resting. And even if that means they need a nap, they need a nap from 1 to 2. You take a nap from 1 to 2, right?
I like when the baby sleeping thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. When they're taking a break, get that break in, because you, after that, it's nonstop, right? And if you know, for me, I'm with Venitra, just being able to step outside. I mean, there were times when I just wanted a 10-minute walk and I couldn't get 10 minutes. Well, I did 2-minute walks. Let me just walk down the street and walk right back up. And I was gone for 2 minutes, and it gave me peace of mind. And I checked in and everything was good. And I did a few things in the house. Okay, I have another 2 minutes, step outside, just something to take those, to get to do that deep breathing, to cleanse, even if it's just for a couple of minutes, so that you can, find whatever you can to recharge that battery, and then you roll your sleeves back up and get right back into it.
And celebrate yourself, celebrate those small victories, celebrate those small times that you were able to take a 2-minute walk. Yeah, it wasn't a 30-minute walk, but hey, I got 2 minutes in. Celebrate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate all those different ways that, you guys can take care of yourselves while taking care of us. I think that's the main thing, because I think a lot of us, we feel bad. It's like, we don't want to feel like a burden at the end of the day. You know, sometimes you can't help it, and that's the situation. Like, it is what it is. But there's that feeling of being a burden, and so just knowing that there's different ways that you can disconnect for a few, just to get your own personal time and stuff like that, I think is really good to put out there for the audience. But last question for you guys before I give you the opportunity to give your information out is, what advice would you give a new caregiver as they begin to start taking care of a loved one? And like, maybe for you, Jennifer, what are some of your best practices that you could share with the audience that you had?
Get a notebook. You already touched on this, Jamie. Spiral bound, electronic, whatever it is, get a notebook, because it becomes like a diary of sorts. So it allows you to, you know, if you have access to My Chart, I think that's fantastic. A lot of what you'll read in those My Chart notes are above your head. You've got to Google things. You may not know what these words are, right? You've got a notebook, scribble that down. What does this mean? When you're caring for your loved one, there might be something that you saw that makes you kind of question, wait a minute, was that okay? Was that right? You may not want to bring that up with your loved one, but that's something you want to bring up with your doctor. When you write it down, then you can remember to bring that to the doctor. And same for the patient. If the patient has questions, if there's something that the patient doesn't understand or the patient is concerned about, you can write that down yourself. And so when you're in those moments with the doctor and you're overwhelmed or you're getting new information, my gosh, how can you remember those questions? You've got this notebook, electronic or whatever, where you can reference that. And it becomes like a Bible. It became essential for me to not have to retain everything in my head and remember everything, that I had that notebook written down that I could just always grab. And now that my sister's gone, that notebook, it's difficult sometimes to look at, but it chronicles her whole lung cancer journey. And I'm grateful to have that as a teaching lesson for like my life going forward. So I would say start there. You've got to have a dedicated notebook, not something you scribble down here and there, a notebook dedicated to that care.
I love it.
Mm-hmm. I would just say some of the things we talked about is honestly really just planning. One, knowing what their wishes are, sitting down and having those tough conversations that we don't want to have about what do you want to do if this happens, right? So honoring their wishes and creating a plan of who's part of our care team, family members, their friends, your relatives. Kind of understanding that ARP has a great planning your caregiver journey, ARP.org. You can go there and literally it tells you to identify who's the gas provider, who's the because once we get into things we don't know, we don't talk about finances as a community often. So where's your bank account? You know, do you have long-term care insurance? Do you have Medicare? Do you have, a commercial plan? All those things in order to help this loved one. Part of that planning journey is knowing all of their information financially and what are their wishes. I think is a great way to start, as well as the area agency on aging. Again, I'm going to say when you don't know where to go, including counseling. You have to feed into yourself. Having a caregiver support group or counseling that you can do is always great as well, because you're going to face a crisis throughout this journey, but always caring for yourself, regardless of what the stages you're in caregiving, is just so important.
Mm-hmm. And my summary is, it's okay not to be okay. We don't have to be super caregiver all the time. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm tapping out right now. I need somebody to tag in. Mm-hmm. So, just lean on that support system, lean on family and friends, let your village come through and help you. And I have a mug, I think it's downstairs. And, it's so cliche. It's, you can't pour from an empty cup, but it is so true. You have to make sure you take care of yourself, because you aren't any good to anybody else if you don't take care of yourself.
Yep. 100%.
So true. So true.
All right, ladies, we have just a few minutes left. I want to give everybody the opportunity to shout out their contact information. If anybody who's been listening or anybody who watches the stream after the fact wants to get in touch with you to ask questions, to maybe just lend some support or say thank you, where can they get a hold of you? So Jennifer, we'll start with you.
I'm going to have them contact you, Jamie.
What?
I am here, and so, my hope, my hope was that Deborah and I talked about starting a nonprofit and getting really involved with the advocacy community. And unfortunately, her health took a turn, and we weren't able to do that last year. But I'm grateful to still be connected with you and Michelle, and particularly with Heal Collaborative. So I'm debating what the right social media platform is to get on. So I would say in the interim, contact me through Heal.
Okay.
Or Jamie.
Yeah. Or
Thank
folks, leave a comment on the video itself, and we'll get it over to Jennifer if you want to connect with her. All right, Michelle, go ahead.
Sure. So you can reach us on our website at callforcaring.org. And so there you can find out about our upcoming events. You can access our podcast. And also you can access our general resource page that's coming up. We're calling a toolkit. It is, we're introducing the 5 C's of caregiving in 2025. So that's care, collaboration, culture, community, and compassion. And so for each one of those different C's, we will have resources that you can link to directly and reach out to those different contacts. And so callforcaring.org, you can give us a call at 470-785-3129. Thank you.
All right. And last but certainly not least, Venitra, go ahead and give your contact information.
So you all can reach out to me at frankiemayfoundation.com, and it's FRANKIEMAE foundation.com. And our phone number is 704-400-1779, 704-400-1779.
Absolutely. And folks, I do this every show and I always forget who I am on social media, but you can follow me on TikTok at It's Just Jams, all one word. My advocacy account is Jamie Knox Advocacy. My Facebook is Jamie Jam, and my Instagram is just_jams. So connect with me there. I share my journey on various different platforms. My TikTok page is a lot more fun than it is advocacy, so don't judge me, but that's what the platform is for. But the advocacy platform on TikTok is a good one to connect with as well. Make sure you check out Heal Collaborative. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram, and as well as YouTube as well. They're streaming on all of their platforms, so you can make sure you catch the replay if you missed any of this episode. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that the African American Lung Cancer Patient and Caregiver Summit 2025 is coming up next year, April 24th through 26th in Houston, Texas. So make sure you keep it locked to Heal Collaborative so you can get all the details on when to register for that event. If you missed this year's, you don't want to miss last year's. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight, for being with us for this amazing panel of caregivers, organizations, and just amazing women in general. Thank you guys so much for being with me tonight and sharing your resources, your time, and most importantly, your expertise with everybody who's listening tonight. I will be back in December with some new content for you guys. I believe we're circling around clinical trials for December. So that should be a very, very good conversation. In the meantime, I hope everybody has a safe and happy Thanksgiving, and we'll catch you guys next time right here on Voices That Heal.